No questions. Okay, no questions. Well, then we'll informally have questions. I would say I'm running for Congress because I believe that unless we get a financial house in order in Washington, D.C., there are going to be profound consequences for the American dollar. I think there will be profound consequences in terms of future rates of inflation. I think there will be profound consequences in terms of the American way of life and the dreams that it has historically afforded. That's why I'm running for Congress. And so in simplest form, what I'd first say is that spending absolutely matters. I mean, Milton Friedman was once asked, what's the ultimate measure of government? And his answer is what it spends. And it's not the only measure, but it's a pretty important one because it sets the stage for what ultimately the government asks from every one of us as individuals and collectively as businesses or as corporations in terms of tax load. And so if you were to look at my track record on that front, I was actually rated #1 in the entire United States Congress in efforts to limit federal spending and limit federal taxation because it matters. It directly impacts people's lives on a daily basis. I was rated #1 in the entire United States Congress by Citizens Against Government Waste in efforts to do the same. I was rated as financially the most conservative governor in the United States of America by the Cato Institute. I was the first governor in the United States of America to turn back stimulus money at a time that it wasn't popular because I didn't believe that a problem of too much debt would be solved and get more debt. And so I could give you a long list of thoughts on that front, but the basic premise is this. In the same way that you all at an individual level or a business level have to get your financial house in order, I think we do in Washington, D.C., because if you look at the latest Congressional Budget Office numbers, what they show is there will be a serious drag on our economy and ultimately your ability to do commerce if we don't get it right. Secondly, I would say soil conditions absolutely matter. And I've spent a lot of time trying to work on a whole disparate range of different soil conditions. When you look outside this winter here at the Maritime Center, what strikes you is how incredibly beautiful the low country of South Carolina is. And so, for instance, in my second term of governor, in my running for my second term, I was actually endorsed by the Sierra Club, which is not a normal thing for a Republican, but I was endorsed because we were so aggressive in a free market-based way in trying to preserve land. Because we said, you know, part of the goose is laying the golden egg here in the low country and across our state is the way that we look and feel different than some of the other places. And so in attracting retirees and attracting tourists to this part of the world, we got to continue to, I think, maintain that unique piece of competitive advantage in the way that we look and feel. That would be one end of the spectrum. Another end of the spectrum, we spend a lot of time, for instance, instituting a Chartersville bill, or we spend a lot of time on a tech prep program because we thought to have first-rate workers, you got to train them not just for college, but for technical trades as well. We spent a lot of time in Employment Security Commission form, Employment Security Commission reform. I'm trying to jam in too much in 5 minutes. Employment Security Commission reform, workers' comp reform, tort reform, all of which were about bettering the soil condition for business that might be small here in the state, for 2 kids with a dream in their parents' basement of wanting to start a business, or for a Boeing looking at a place like South Carolina. What does all that add up to? It adds up to $24 billion of cumulative investment came during my 8 years of governorship, more than in any other 8-year time period in South Carolina history. Why? Because we focused on getting soil conditions better in the state so that we can compete and beat with places around the world. I would say third, this port matters. When you look outside, 1 minute, okay, it's going to be tough. I want to clear up one thing. You know, facts are, I guess, a casualty of the last couple of weeks of any campaign. And I want to clear up one thing. I am absolutely committed to the port and to the maritime business because it's not just important for the Tri-County area, it's important for this state, it's important for this region. And so, you know, I was criticized last night at a debate by Elizabeth saying, well, you against support based on an omnibus bill that I voted against. Now, I want you to think about this. In the world of politics, I went and I supported at the committee level stuff for the port. So I actually signed off on the transportation bill, voted for it, but when it got up to the omnibus bill, I voted against it. Fair enough. Because there could be a lot of junk added at the omnibus bill level. I think that still says you're very much in support of the port because taking that logic and reversing it, Elizabeth said last night, you know, I'm against the president's budget. Well, what's in the president's budget? Funding for our port. I think it would be no more true of me to say she's against support based on being against the president's budget than to suggest otherwise. So I want to just make very clear to the business community that I'm not only committed to it, but I think I bring something extra to it in that seniority is retained in the United States Congress. I would leapfrog ahead of about 60% of the Republican caucus, which would give me that much voice in conveying y'all's perspective there in Washington, D.C. And finally, I would say I'm a fan of divided government, a real fan of divided government. So $1 million is coming in from outside interests where the Democratic Congressional Committee, Nancy Pelosi's PAC at $370,000, whole long list of different groups, ultimately not so much about this race between Elizabeth and Jean and I, but ultimately I would argue about the composition of the United States Congress in 2014 and whether or not Pelosi takes back the House. And what I would submit to every one of you is that if she did, it would be bad for the underlying business condition right here in Charleston, South Carolina, and right here across the Low Country in the 1st Congressional District. With that, I'll call it quits, and I would say thank you for your consideration. I would sure appreciate your vote and help on May 7th, hard to believe, next Tuesday. Thanks so much.
Dr. Mark Sanford, thank you very much. Let's hear it for all three of our candidates.